Welcome, everyone, through all time and space to an all-new episode of Weebs on the Weekends, a podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look at anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today, we'll be covering the news from the second week of September 2020 and give our thoughts on the fourth episode of the 2010 anime Broken Blade. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm a part-time weeb and full-time English language sensei. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Sam Martinez, a part-time weeb and full-time automail mechanic. How you doing today, Sam?
Ciao, Magister Johnson. Come va la po?
All right, ciao. So, again, it feels in the Mediterranean level, but we went to the mountain regions of Spain last time. We've been to France. So ciao ciao can be Vietnamese, but I doubt you'll go there. So I'm going to say something near the holy city of the Vatican. So something Italian.
Wow, that was really, really close, man. Yeah, so this language is known as the Landin language, and it is a romantic language that is from the northern part of Italy in the South Tyrol province. It's in the area of the Dolomite Mountains, and the estimated number of speakers that use this language is about 40,000, and these numbers were taken in 2006 to 2011. And yeah, man, you were really spot on with that one. Congratulations. That was really, really close.
Cool. So we can count that as a win. So
Oh, yeah.
how am I doing? I'm doing pretty well. Again, it's the second week of my new school year. We're back in session, like full session. So wearing a mask, have all these safety procedures to keep all my kids safe, which is great. We have like a slated lunch period. So like all the kids can't gather in the lunch hall. They do it by grades now instead of by floor levels, essentially. Each class has its own lunch period. So it's kind of antisocial a little bit. So kids are stuck inside their own class groups. But, safety is all that's important. And every day I have to come through a gated, housing perimeter where they scan my temperature. They give me a fresh mask to wear. And then when I get inside, they check my temperature again. And then I can get to my office. So it's been a real weird past 2 weeks of getting used to being overly sensitive about my health, but at least keeping track of my temperature every single day. And let's see, anything else? Mulan came out last weekend and got to see that. Tenet, the Christopher Nolan movie, comes out this weekend, so I'll be able to see that soon, which I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan. So yeah. I'm excited to return to the movie theater since that's one of my favorite pastimes. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good, Sam. How about you?
Doing well. It's interesting that you mentioned about the current proceedings that you had to do for your job, because that was something that we had to do for my job, taking temperatures, making sure that nobody had a high fever, wearing masks and things like that. And one of the nursing homes that I had to go to, it was like going into Fort Knox in the beginning. They take your temperature. You had to have a form saying that you're negative. And then before you can go in to interact with any of the patients, you had to go and put on a gown and gloves. And then if you were visiting multiple people, you had to go back and change out of that gown and put on another gown. And they had another area for people that were just admitted. So like they would quarantine them 2 weeks at a time before they would put them with the general population to make sure that, if they were contaminated with the virus, that, they wouldn't contaminate anyone. And to go into that section, you had to change your gown out again. And I had to recently go back to that same facility not too long ago, and they had relaxed their standards a little bit, in the sense that, once you put your gown on, you're okay. You don't necessarily have to change it again. So it's good, because I don't have to play Russian roulette in the dressing room over there anymore. But in terms of what I'm doing in my spare time, I've been doing a little bit more Final Fantasy, like I said last week. I thought I was a lot closer to the end, because I got to the part where they were going to drop the plate on Sector 7, And from what I've been told by everybody else, it seemed like that was near the end of where the game was supposed to be. And it turns out like I have a lot more gameplay, which is good. But now, right now, I'm just doing a whole bunch of fest quests and grinding before I can continue the story. And that's always fun. And it's interesting that you mentioned about Mulan and Tenet, because like I've been contemplating wanting to go and see Tenet because I wanted to see it because Denzel Washington's son is in it too, and he seemed to be a really good actor.
Yeah, John David Washington. Yeah, it's definitely a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what he did previously, but from the trailers and how he portrays himself, he seems like to be the black James Bond. I mean, I know that it's going to side with Christopher Nolan into sci-fi a little bit with
Mm-hmm.
what's revealed in the trailer, not to spoil anything for anybody, but yeah. And I'm interested in mostly because of the other cast members, like Robert Pattinson is in it
Oh yeah,
as a
yeah, yeah,
major as a major key player, and he's going to be the new Batman if the Batman ever comes out, since it's been halted. The production of it has been halted because some of the staff
no,
on the
he got it.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that yeah. I didn't want to say that to discourage anybody, but yeah, that Rob Pattinson contracted it, and so they had to shut down production. But
Mm-hmm.
he's also in this Mongolian movie, which I'm really interested to see whenever I get a chance to, called
Oh yeah,
Waiting, Waiting for Barbarians, and it's starring Mark Rylance, Johnny Depp, and this very famous Mongolian actress who has a key role in the film. So I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, and he's also did Lighthouse last year, so like he has all the stink of Twilight off him. So I'm very much looking
yeah.
forward to see how his career progresses.
No, El, what were your thoughts about Mulan? Because I know, like me, we grew up on the cartoon, and I'm just gonna say it hit different when Eddie Murphy wasn't in it.
Oh, is that what caught your attention? Oh, okay. So yeah, what caught my attention really about it was that it didn't, not that it didn't do anything new. It's just, it was, I mean, it takes out all the music essentially,
Yeah,
puts it somewhere in the background. I don't think it plays, what's that song? Train You Like a Man, or
yeah.
I'm so
The
bad.
the two big songs was make a man out of you, and it was that song when she was talking about her reflection.
Exactly. Yeah, they didn't even put it as like orchestral or anything orchestra based in the background. So I was very
They
surprised that they did.
did, but you had to really listen for it. Like it's very very subtle. It's barely even there.
Yeah, it's like a hint of it, and it's not
Hmm.
really like a musical score to it. So, the other thing, like, I mean, you kind of mentioned it already, Sam, that they took out the talking dragon, but then they
Yeah.
put in a magical witch. So it's like if that was going to be the division line of making it more historic, like the original not Japanese, but Chinese Tale of Mulan,
Yeah.
you don't need a female antagonist. And it kind of felt very Disneyfied that, oh, we have a female, hero or heroine. So we
Hmm.
need a female villain. So she has some equal footing, is that she can't just take on men like Mulan did in the animated version.
Which is
So it
weird
just feels like,
because that's like you said, like even like that was Disney, and the fact that like you feel that like it's Disney-fied, even though like Disney in the beginning, they didn't do that. So it's like they took a step backwards in that regard.
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not anything like what it's done. Like, I mean, I can see it in theaters where I
Hmm.
am, but there's offering it on Disney Plus, but at like a very high premium cost, and I believe it's $35.
Yeah, it was about oh no, you have to pay for it. It was about $30, and I want to say that Disney was looking into doing the same thing for Black Widow as well to give it a sort of early release along with releasing it in theaters, so they can try to make that money back.
Yeah, I heard about that when they were talking about doing that for Artemis Fowl, which came
Hmm.
out earlier this summer, but it did so bad, no one was really interested. It's like one of those last great young adult novels, YA novels, that still is lingering
Hmm.
around, but they kind of did the same thing, as they just took all the teeth out of the out of the property, where the main, protagonist kid is a criminal mastermind, but
Yeah.
in the movie he's just a smart kid. So it's like they sand off all the edges on that. But same thing with like Mulan, and they're definitely not doing it for Black Widow, especially if how things are progressing in the West is that
Hmm.
in the next month or so, a lot of the restrictions are going to lighten even more than they are now. So theaters are
Yeah.
going to pop open again, and people are going to be kind of hesitant, but they're going to like, oh, Black Widow, a Marvel movie? Yes, I'll risk my health for that. Uh,
Exactly, man. When the mouse is wearing the cape, you know everything's going to be safe.
yes, so reassuring, the mouse. But yeah, I mean, how it is progressing is with the movie industry. I hope
Mm,
it returns to normal, but I don't think anyone really knows how to adapt the film industry to what's going on. I mean, some people have gone about, shooting in private, shooting like in enclosed sound stages, like really
mm-hmm.
regulating the flow of the cast members and the staff and all the film crew. So it's like possible, but it's still stunted development pacing, I guess. So everything you hear now about releasing in like 2021, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Japan has basically returned to normal for everyday anime production. I mean, Haikyuu season 4 is about to premiere in 2 weeks. Yay!
Oh, I know you're excited. I know you're excited. Yeah, have
Yeah.
you been able to get your creative fanfic juices flowing?
Not so much. I've delved more into the manhwa side of things. I've finished
Mm-hmm.
Tower of God a couple weeks ago, so I'm on to some other properties like Solo Leveling and Sweet Home and Last Reader, so other big titles in the manhwa kind of genre. So
I've
I'm
heard
getting
good
my
things
fix
about
there.
solo leveling.
Yeah, it's decent. And it's one of those things of like starting out with like one of the greatest titles in Tower of God and like comparing it to that, and it doesn't really compare, but it's like one of those, yeah, if I have to read something else, I'll read Solo Leveling kind of
Oh,
situations.
wow. Dang. Okay. Well, I mean, at least you got something a bit more average now. Like you got the goods, you got the average. Let's just hope that you stay in that upper tier. Excuse me, in that upper tier of manhwa. But Jay,
Yeah.
would you like to would you like for me to give everybody a bit of the news?
Sure. As always, we cover two segments in our episodes. First, we break down the anime's news highlights of the week. Sam's going to grab about 3 to 5 news stories per week that really caught like industry attention and like what's going to be, progressing the industry forward. And then we're going to be talking about episode 4, which is a movie, but also not a movie. Broken Blade, or slash also AKA also Break Blade. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Sam, tell us the news. Let us hear the news.
All right. So this first bit of news is a little bit about what you had mentioned earlier, how with Japan they're doing sort of special screenings for different films. And the film that they made for Cells at Work, The Return of the Strongest Enemy, A Huge Uproar Inside of the Body's Bowels. That's the full title of the film, by the way. They did a special screening edition for this movie, and this theatrical release became the number 10 slot in its first weekend. And there was also news about its second season that was being greenlit along with the anime. And the same person, the same director, Yuko Kakihara, is going to be overseeing and writing this series scripts along with the returning character designs. And we're having the same person who did the music as well. And the cast is returning too. And it's slated. The season 2 is slated to premiere in January 2021. So, did you happen to have a chance to take a look at Cells at Work, Jay? What are your thoughts on the property?
It's really interesting in how it goes about educating its viewer on things. It reminded me a lot like Food Wars, which is kind of maybe the bad example of that, where the manga is more educational because it has like the recipes that each chef or cook uses in the show.
Hmm.
So like they lay out the steps and they lay out the ingredients and everything. The show doesn't really do that. It kind of um, fast paced walks through like what's going on with the dishes and the chemistry, the gastronomy of it. So, but what else it reminded me of was like, I think it's called How Heavy Are These Dumbbells?
Yes.
Uh, it came out last year. It kind of was like cute girls doing cute things kind of show, but in the way of educating people or the viewer about like proper technique and lifting weights, what it means to like work a certain group of muscles together and what you need to do like to recover from working out or heavy intensive training like that. So I really appreciated Cells at Work's kind of giving a brief biologic lesson on the human anatomy, and even I would like to show it in class sometimes if I ever delve into like
Hmm.
uh, that kind of terminology. But I just focus on English language, but I don't sign into the science side of it. I let other teachers handle that, and mathematics. I cannot add 2 plus 2. So I really much appreciate it. I was not looking forward to a season 2 or even the movie. I think
What?
season 2 is going to be called Code Black, I believe,
Yeah.
and the whole way that they basically embody the different cells and how they work is really interesting. Like certain cells are like kill cells, the platelets are like little kids, but they're moving
Hmm.
around having heavy machinery and like equipment, and it's really cute and adorable. And the main uh, character is a red blood cell delivery girl, and it's just a like all around cute show. It's just like nothing that inspired me to say, "Oh, I'll come back to this to feel cuteness." But yeah,
It was just funny. I did now that you mentioned those other animes. It does remind me of that, where it's more of a shop talk in terms of human biology. But it was just interesting because for me, when I first saw it, it instantly reminded me of Osmosis Jones, the cartoon animated movie that they did with Bill Murray and I'm gonna hate myself for not remembering his name. The black comedian. What's his name?
Will Smith.
No, 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 the good one. I'm sorry, Will Smith. Will Smith is good. Chris Rock, Chris Rock, and it was just like you said. It was just very technical. Whereas with Osmosis Jones, the character designs and the way that the cells were, it was more fantastical and fairly loosely based on anatomy. So you would have the main character, Chris Rock's character, he was a white blood cell. So like he looked like he was white, and he was a cop, sort of. And whereas the white blood cell in this show was this guy, he was wearing all white, and essentially, he is this army ranger type dude who's always like in the mud and is always on the lookout, just always alert and aware. So I guess sort of like a bodyguard, but for like everybody. And in Osmosis Jones, even though like everybody said that there was a different type of cell, there was no real different distinctions. Whereas in Cells at Work, as you said, you have your main character, which is the red blood cell. She's wearing red. She's a delivery girl. It's you can tell the different cells by how they look and how they dress and how they act. And it was sort of a revisit as well as a refresh on a fond memory that I had. And I've seen online where people were saying that season 2 of Cells at Work was supposed to deal with the current virus that's causing our pandemic. And I'm not gonna lie, just the idea at that just makes me laugh and makes me want to see it, because on how they dealt with all the other viruses and all the other illnesses in the human body was both hilarious and very educational. So if they do go that route, I will like to see it, to see how they'll like to poke fun at um the whole situation and the characters just being themselves as well. Okay, so the next bit of news that I have is Akudama Drive. It's the newest series by Studio Production. It's slated for October 8th to be released. They had just released key visuals as well as a series trailer, opening and an ending theme artist. And this series is supposed to take part in a post-war world where the Kanto and the Kansai groups are faced off against each other in Japan, dividing the country in two. The Kansai become dependent on the Kanto governing officials, and the police begin to lose control to an increase of the presence of criminals known as the Akudama. And with this series, it seems to be another sci-fi slash fantasy film, or not film, but a work, and it's also supposed to be a anime original. So let me see. I'm trying to look it up, but while I'm looking up some animes by Studio Period. Oh, hold on. Google works pretty fast. They did Bleach. They did Rock Lee and his Ninja Pal, so it's like the chibi version. They did Naruto. Let's see. Cities of Gold. They did Hikaru no Go. They did Saber Rider. They did I'm Going to Be an Angel. That's from '99. What are you thinking about this? Them doing an anime original and it being a sci-fi series, because that's one thing that we've been talking about lately, is that there seemed to be a sort of decline on mecha, but with this increase of sci-fi anime that's being flooded into the market, do you think that this means that we may see a mecha anime in the future?
It does seem so that, sci-fi and mecha, like, of course, mecha is just a subset of sci-fi, and we see
Mm-hmm.
that sci-fi is always going to be a universal story since it addresses like the human condition and what is our relationship to technology. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're leaning more to a new like standard of mecha, maybe leaning more into like we had Ultraman and Gridman recently, so
Oh
maybe
yeah,
sci-fi is more geared towards like a cybernetic bent and like the idea of transhumanism and what does it mean actually to like augment the human body. So that I think is going to become more popular. But to say we're going to have maybe another big fighty robot show is probably, a far off dream. But again, like it's not like Mecha's dead in 2020 or anything. It's just like not as popular as it was. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially with how the far reaching Darling in the Franks, not pandemic, but what would you call that? Outcry, maybe? That
yeah,
how that kind of stirred the anime community around that, we're going to get it eventually. Just like, are we going to see it return to its former glory? I don't know. But what you said about its premise of its original work does
yeah,
sound a little bit to lean more into like the tourism type of anime, like to show off like a certain region's culture, to show off their own individual identity versus like the different regions of Japan kind of have this like clear divide about if you're from Hokkaido, if you're from Okinawa, you're from like Kanto, like you're from different regions, you like have
yeah,
different dialects, you have different like history. So it sounds like it's going to lean more into that. I mean, I mentioned uh not Fulbright. What did I mention? Oh, Macross Frontier last
yeah.
episode, and
Mm-hmm.
how that shows off idol culture. So I would definitely think that any sci-fi is going to lean into that more. That pairing sci-fi with certain regions and how it adapts per region would be an interesting take on it.
It would be. However, it seems as though that with this show, it's going to be slightly noir. At least, like from the visuals that we've seen, it seems with the type of color palette that they have. Like the characters are vibrant and colorful, but their backgrounds is dark, is darker. So it may not be as dark toned as no guns, but it seems like they're going to try to lean towards the Ghost in the Shell type of scenario. Where you were saying how like it's basically exploring the boundaries of human and technology, where the human ends and the technology begins, because we see in the visual that one of the characters has sort of either mechanical gloves, or either has upper body prosthesis. And just to give a bit more of examples of Studio Period's work, I just have them up here. It seems like they did work for Tokyo Ghoul, for Twin Star Exorcists. Let's see, they did their work. They do work for Black Clover, and they were also outsourced for animation for the show The Legend of Korra for Nickelodeon. So they really do have some good chops, and it seems as though that they have some good experience in terms of animation and a wide variety for it. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to it, especially it being a studio original. So we may get to see a little bit of the imaginative nature of the people over there at this studio. And on to the last bit of news that I have for you guys. Violet Evergarden was renewed for a season 2, and a second season was dropped for its movie that's supposed to be released this month. The movie was first slated to be released in April 24th. However, due to the pandemic, it has been slated for the upcoming date, September 18th, 2020. Will you be one of the individuals who would try to see this movie when it's released, Jay?
Oh no, it seems like I'm having a bad record, bad track record for this week of news. So, yeah, wasn't too overly impressed by Violet Evergarden. It felt more
Yeah.
of a technical exercise than a series that was really demanding of attention. Because I
Yeah.
believe it's by Studio Ufotable, the same studio kind of got recently like the big boost in by its Demon Slayer
Mm-hmm.
animations. So I'm in the camp of it's one of the most beautiful looking animes recently in recent history, like anything done by Makoto Shinkai, like Your Name, and I think he just did Weathering with You,
Yeah.
if I'm thinking of his most recent film. But yeah, so it's a good series that looks beautiful. So like one of those things that you would put on your background while you're doing
Mm-hmm.
housework, or you take a screenshot and make it your wallpaper. But for the
Put your
story and for
inspiring quote of the day on your Instagram page.
yes, perfect. Yeah, perfect example. Yeah, the eye-catching beauty thing. Like, oh, this is good anime. Well, you didn't watch it, so I'm in that kind of camp. But I'm not going to. I'm not going to poo-poo anyone's opinion about it, because it does seem that Violet is a very endearing character. It's just one
Mm,
of those situations of like how much tragedy can you really see a character go through, and that's kind of where it landed for me. Is that it's kind of again like there's a difference between watching a sad character get over being sad and then misery porn, which is like ReZero,
yeah.
and Violet Evergarden is just like sides with the it's a sad story, so why do I want to be sad? So yeah.
Oh no, no, I definitely understand what you're saying, because I was watching a little bit of it too, and as you said, some of the scenes, they're just drawn amazing and just so beautiful. I remember there was this one episode where she was trying to run across a lake to give an artist inspiration, and the way that that scene was drawn, it was just it was so good. But as you said, because she's a tragic character, and they dwell on her tragedy, it's it does get annoying, and it does drive on my patience. And it's like, and for me, it's I want to see her grow. I want to see her try to overcome that tragedy. And it's like, and it's just annoying when all they do is just dwell on it, and it seems as though she's not really going anywhere. So I sort of fell out of it. But as you said, it has gained a huge following, not only because it's pretty, but because some people see some value in its work. So it's popular for a reason. It's getting a season 2. They haven't agreed on when it's supposed to be coming out, but they do know that it's supposed to be happening. So if people do need their Violet Evergarden fix, there's going to be a movie to hopefully hold you over until they finally agree on when to release season 2. And that's my segue to the next segment, because Violet Evergarden is part robot because she has robot arms. And it seems like we're going to be finishing up our beloved Mecha season with a movie chosen by our comrade Jay. Jay, how do you feel being at the end of our travels with Mecha this season?
I don't know if I want to be identified as a comrade, but I feel pretty good because surprisingly enough, thanks to the last episode, I found out that I'm a closeted mecha fan, and I didn't really know about it because like all my top 3 mechas on my list was like Code Geass and the Eighth Mobile Suit Team and
hmm
Gunbuster are like some of my, I would say probably my top 50 anime of all time. I mean, Code
Oh, they're
Geass
in
is
your
probably
top
my top.
50. Oh, wow.
Yeah, Code Geass is probably my top 5. But yeah,
Holy crap. Okay. Okay.
yeah, so for what we covered, and I got a lot of interesting recommendations from you, Sam, because I didn't even know about Pat Labor,
hmm
but it seems to have so much acclaim to it, and it's just making me realize about how the state of mecha is nowadays, and want to talk about that in my weeb opinion. But yeah, Sam, as always, the time codes are going to be in the description. So let's move on into our discussion
Yes.
of the 4th episode, which confusingly enough is considered a film. So like every 10th episode we cover a anime film, but technically it is really an episode. So I've seen episode 4, you've seen episodes 1 through 4, and maybe more, Sam.
I've
But
seen all of
yeah,
it.
we're covering. Oh, okay, good. Okay. So yeah, this we're covering Broken Blade, also known as Break Blade, but
hmm
episode 4 is called Land of Calamity. And we start off our discussion on, a typical anime movie with our weeb opinions. And weeb opinion is basically this hard set statement that you can soapbox about, where you can be, it's usually generally extremely based in hyperbole or rooted with a superlative like the best this, the greatest that, or the most something something. So, Sam, can you share with us your weeb opinion?
I would say Break Blade held the hopes and dreams of an opportunity that needed more polish to be something wonderful. A friend of mine had suggested me to read this manga before the anime came out, and I read the first few chapters, and from what I remember, I loved it. And when I had a chance to watch this movie, I was like, "Oh, smokes! Yes, it was animated. I get to see the fights and all this stuff. Let's go!" And I don't know. It seemed as though there was something that was amiss in translation, and there was something that's needed. When I watch this season, it feels as though it's incomplete, almost as though it was a prologue, like with Vinland Saga. Except with Vinland Saga, it was a whole story on its own. You didn't even know it was a prologue until the very end. Whereas in Breakblade, this all that you watch feels like a prologue. It feels to me there's much more to be desired. So that's why I said that it needs to be a bit more polished for it to be a bit more standalone. There were just some things that I think that they needed to work on for it to have more impact of, because this could have been one of the shows that had brought Mecha back into the forefront because of its story. It just had so much possibility, and it feels like it missed that mark for me. What about you? What's your weeb opinion?
Okay, I got you. So you're judging it on the full 6 episode run. You're not just saying that after watching episode 4.
No, episode. Okay, so after episode 4, I was hyped as hell. It was great. It was just there because there were still some things that I had leading up to episode 4, and or at least like reservations, some concerns, and then it was just after episode 4, some of them were addressed, some of them weren't addressed, and again, at series as a whole, it felt like it could have done more, but up until episode 4, it was pretty solid.
Okay, that's fair then. Yeah. So, like you said, or like I mentioned earlier, that you've seen the whole series. I've seen
Mm.
only episode 4 because, again, I went into this thinking that 4 was the 4th movie, not the 4th episode. So, yeah, like you said, it's based off of manga, but we'll talk about that a little bit
Mhm.
later. So, I believe we have basically the same weeb opinion. It's funny
What?
because like,
Well, okay, go ahead.
I'm seeing it as just episode 4, but you've seen all episodes, so you're speaking as more informed. But just as like a skeptic of Mecha, I kind of see where this is going. And my weeb opinion is that Break Blade killed the mech genre. Killed the
No!
and
You think Breakblade was the one that put the nail in the coffin?
Yeah, so like we just spent, 7 episodes talking about Unicorn, which I believe you would account as probably one of the best anime of the decade. And,
Mm-hmm.
personally, I didn't put it on my top 10 list because, when you're a deep fan, I guess, or a closeted fan, you kind of have a interesting standard that kind of
Yeah.
misaligns from the majority of mech fans. But anyways, yeah, so but it felt with episode 4 in particular that I see the decline and reason to why Mecha isn't as mainstream as it once was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a thing of this was like Knights and Magic before Knights and Magic, and this is also the better version of Flowers of Exflonia. And the reason why I say that this killed the mech genre because this easily makes my top 10 after one episode. And it's interesting enough that just watching one episode is better than almost all of my other mecha that I have, a fondness for. So I don't think it breaks my top 3. I will have to come back and reevaluate it to see if it does, reach into the top 3. But my top 3 is kind of solid. So, but for right now, I see that, I would say the weeb opinion is that the
Yeah.
year 2010, overall, the year 2010 just killed the mech genre. And like you said, the final nail in the coffin was this anime that premiered in October 2010 after Robot Unicorn. I mean, there's some other notable mecha shows in this.
No. This was the first film for this one was released in May 2010. Like all the episodes were released in 2010. It seems. No, I'm sorry. Episode 5 was in 2011.
Okay, got you. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like this was the
Mm-hmm.
last mecha
Yeah.
show in the year,
Yeah.
so
This episode in particular. Yeah, you're right. It was released in October.
right, yeah. So I mean, that's kind of more grandstanding than yours, I guess, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe I have a stronger opinion that mecha isn't what it used to be. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's my weeb opinion. But anyways, anything to say about that, Sam, before we move on?
I'm kind of interesting because you said that it jumped into that this one episode made it jump into your top 10. So like your top 10 mecha anime. Would it be in the lower moon for you or would it be in the upper moon?
Oh, it's definitely Upper Moon. I would say it's probably
Really?
around like it's better than Big O, so it would probably place around
Ooh,
my
that's
3 to 4
that's
spot. Yeah, my 3 to 4 spot, and I'm not surprised at all. But I mean, we'll talk about more in depth when we get to our favorite lines and favorite moments farther down in the episode. But yeah, following our weeb opinions, basically having the same opinion that we'll talk about the studio and the voice actor profiles. So the studio, I'm sure you already know this, Sam, but this is animated by Studio Production I.G. Do you know what IG stands for?
I've
Ooh,
seen
question
IG
again.
several times in watching the Mecha shows. I think IG also did Immortal Grand Prix, but I
Ah,
don't know what they
okay.
stand for.
Yeah, so it's the name of the co-founders of the production or the studio company, and it was
Oh,
founded back in 1987, so it's a good
holy
30 years
smoke.
old. But yeah, it was producer Ishikawa and the character designer Gota. They probably, yeah. So we did mention one of their properties earlier from our previous episode, the IGPX Immortal Grand Prix,
Hmm.
which again we had to put onto the list because like I totally forgot that that was a thing back in my youth watching Toonami or wherever it actually showed in the West. But anyways, yeah. So they're also known for doing Haikyuu,
Oh,
and
okay.
they're also known for doing Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, Eden of the East, Psychopaths, Fully Cooley, and most recently they're doing the work on Nobilis, which is the third Crunchyroll web comic production following Tower of God and God of High School. So they're a pretty big company, like they're one of the biggest in, in the production of anime, video games, TV shows, everything. So like they even worked on the Tales of Euphonia franchise. They did Star Ocean. They did, funny enough, they did Sonic Riders, if you remember that game on the GameCube, and also they did the animation for Persona 5. So it's really interesting how deep that studio goes. I mean, my previous statement about Studio Ghibli was that they're the most underrated anime studio because no one really is aware of all the work they do.
Yeah,
But IGN or Production
IG.
IGN is like one of those IG, thank you. IGN, the video game
Yes.
magazine company. But yeah, IG that they're kind of the standard for most people. Like if you haven't seen a production IG anime, then you're probably lying to yourself or you just don't know. Yeah, but yeah, you got any interesting facts about the studio, Sam?
Not really. No. The only really fact that I have about this show is the guy who wrote the music for Blake Braid as a whole. After watching it, I recognized that it was the same guy who did the music for Hunter x Hunter, the 2011 anime, and it was just interesting because it seemed like he did this work before he did Hunter x Hunter, and the way that he does his music score and his composition in Hunter x Hunter, it's just so well done. And to think that I was able to hear his thumbprints in watching an unrelated show, it was just sort of interesting to me.
Okay, yeah, I see that. I
Hmm.
believe his last name is Hirano, and I don't even want to pronounce his first name, but it's like Yoshi. But yeah, Hirano is like one of those like star profile music composers in anime up
Hmm.
there with like we just talked about with Gundam Unicorn with what's his name, Sawano,
Yeah.
and yeah, just the John Williams blah 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 of anime music. But yeah, Hirano is like one of those iconic figures. So yeah, not surprised that his musicality is like recognizable too. Like you're a deep fan of Hunter x Hunter too, so I'm like
Hmm.
that makes sense that you caught on to that. So yeah, other than that, with the studio that's done, and oh, that's the other thing I wanted to mention that
Yeah.
it's funny that they've done like they're so prolific that like where they show up is like really odd. So like they actually did the animations for Kill Bill. There's an
Oh,
animated
they're the
scene.
ones who did that anime style scene. I think it was like Lucy Liu's backstory, right?
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
Origins of Ren Ishii. Yeah, so like yeah, they have over 1700 titles
Holy
like
smokes.
branching off. So yeah, so again, like if if you haven't heard of Production IG, that's because you ignorant or you just, you don't know.
You're
You're
lying
not
to yourself.
educated. You're lying to yourself, exactly. So that's the studio. So
Hmm.
following up with the voice actors, let's say there's four main characters. Again, like I've only watched episode 4, so maybe Sam, you can give us a little bit more background on other characters. But
Yeah.
the four characters that I have right now is the main character or MC in, oh man, his name is so hard to pronounce for me, but it's like Ruget Arrow. Is that
Rygart.
right?
Rygart.
Rygart, yes, Rygart Arrow. Yeah, let's see if I cannot mess up his voice actor's name, but it's Shoichiro Hoshi,
Hmm.
and I really didn't catch anything of value or his most recognizable voice acting roles. But what I did remember him from, because I'm such a Code
Yeah.
Geass fanboy, is that he actually voices Gino Weinberg. He's one of the Knights of Rounds in Code
Uh-huh.
Geass. Like he's one of the royal knights for the Britannian Empire. So that's where I know him from. But do you know where he's from, Sam?
Looking right now, it seems like he did roles for Gundam Seed and Gundam Seed Destiny. So a lot of your Seed heads out there, they would definitely recognize his voice.
All right, cool, cool, cool. Yeah, so it looked like he was most recognizable or his most acclaimed performances in this, which I find surprising.
Hmm.
But he's somewhat of a not a background character actor, but he's a journeyman essentially that he supplies his voice. He's well developed in like performance, but he doesn't have any big title roles under his name. But yeah, so the love interest for Ruget
Rygart.
is Rygart. Yes, thank you, Rygart. Is okay. How do you pronounce her name? Is it Sina? Sina?
No, no, Sigan.
Um, Oh my gosh, Sam. Okay, Siga. Siga.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. Jay, did you watch the dub or the sub?
I watched the sub.
Okay, I watched the dub. So I don't know. They might
Okay.
have pronounced it differently in the sub because I'm just telling you what they told me in the dub.
Okay. Cool. Okay, because I'm reading it. I'm trying to read it phonetically, and that's not always how language works. So,
Yes.
anyways, but yeah, she's voiced by Chiwa Sato, and
Hmm.
I don't know if you know the Baka Matagarat. Oh my gosh, the Japanese kanji is so hard. But this is Boko
the
Matagatari.
that series that talks a whole lot, really fast.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So she voices the main female lead in the show. Oh my gosh. And she has like purple hair. She's kind of like top waifu material generally. She is like Senju
Is that the
Gahara.
cat-looking character, or like she can turn into a cat or something? You said she had purple
Uh,
hair.
yeah, I think that's one version of her. The
Yeah.
Monogatari series is so confusing. It's up there with Evangelion and Kingdom Hearts, but
Yes.
yeah, that's her like most attractive title role. Do you know
Mhm.
her? Do you know where she's from?
That's all that I'm saying. Oh, looking at her stuff right now, it seems like she was in Madoka Magica as well. She was Puella. I can't
Ooh.
remember which one that was, and she also voiced Chloe Eisburn in some of the Fate Stay Night series.
All right, cool, cool,
Hmm.
cool. Yeah, again, I'm just trying to pull the I know like her voice from places, but I was like,
Yeah.
where do I know this from? Like, Monogatari is like one of those series that is just it kind of washes over you. But anyways, and then in the third place for voice or like the title cards for the actors, I think his name is Grieger. Gregor.
Hold
Grieger.
on. Oh, no, Gerga. That name is
Oh
just
my
spelled weird.
god. Yeah, Gegar. Okay. Like the Pokemon Gengar, I guess. But anyway, yeah. So is voiced by Ko. Ooh, it's like Sasuke. It's like Kosasuke, Toriyumi,
Hmm.
and he's actually voiced one of the Arankars in Bleach, the pink
Oh,
hair Arankar with the
what?
glasses. I think it's like Zarelli Aparo. It's hard. It's so hard. Anyways, the wrong card names are so like I think Spanish based. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm probably not the one to try to pronounce that. But
Hold on.
Sam, do you recognize this guy?
You said he was a round car. I'm trying to find Apollo Gratz. That name is so freaking familiar. Or I'm looking for
Yeah,
him real
he's the
quick so I can get. Oh, it's that one. He was the he was the scientist for the Espada, which like you said, it's a subsection of the Iran cars. He was sort of the foil to the 13 Goat Card Squad's scientist captain. He was supposed to be like a mirror image of him. He was that guy? Okay. And I'm seeing that he
yeah.
was also in Darker Than Black too. Let me
Okay.
see
Yeah,
which character he
he has that
was.
snooty eyeglass wearing, push up
Mm.
with your two fingers, know it all kind of personality, and that's the same role he plays in this. So I'm not surprised. But yeah, that's him. And last is Zess. Zess, I think.
Yes, Zest.
Zess. Yeah,
That
one out
was
of four,
great.
baby. It was only four letters and it's spelled like Zeus, but so it's just Zess. But
Yes.
anyways, yeah, voiced by Hiroshi Kamiya. Kamiya. And what I know, what we both know him from, he's the male lead in Angel Beats, the orange-haired Otonshi. Yeah, so he voices the main male lead in that, and we've talked about Angel Beats in depth, and it got a very much downvote from both of us. So not surprised that uh, that show anime definitely did have good voice actors. It's just like a situation of not being good anime, which is the case sometimes. But yeah, those are the four main voice performances in the series. I mean, they don't all make equal appearance in this episode. This episode 4 is a little bit more centered around the supporting cast because there's a
Hmm.
big battle going on. There's a lot of political intrigue with some of the background characters. But yeah, those are the voice actors that deserve like a shout out, since voice actors usually don't get a good like spotlight on them
R-
since the
r- r-
characters are
yeah.
just up front.
Real quick before we go on, that last guy that you said, Hiroshi Kamiya, I'm just looking at some of his stuff too. Bro, he did some big name stuff. He was Levi in Attack on Titan. He's Trafalgar Law in One Piece. He's Mephisto in Blue Exorcist. He's Izaya in Durara. Bro, he we need to put some respect on his name, bro. He's out here. That's
Yeah,
all I'm
for
gonna say.
sure. But yeah, just but since we covered Angel Beats already, I just wanted to say that was his number one. But yeah, he has
Yeah.
definitely more acclaimed roles. But yeah, so uh, basically the rest of the staff is pretty large staff. I mean, the
Hmm.
series is packed with like a lot of political actors and like military leaders and supporting side characters. It's a very well developed human drama around the lives of people. Well, we'll talk about
Yeah.
what the synopsis of the plot is now anyway. So yeah, like we mentioned, that this premiered in October, or it premiered on October 30th 2010, and it has a runtime of 50 minutes. This is episode 4, which has the quote unquote title as a movie, but it is like just a standard episode in a 6 episode series run. And episode 4 is called Land of Calamity. It's based off a manga series of the same name, written and illustrated by, oh my gosh, kanji. Saki Yoshinaga. All right.
Hey, you
Yeah,
got
and it
through it.
goes back. Yeah, I guess so. And it goes back to original release back in 2006, and it's actually still running to today. And it has 18 volumes as of
Hmm.
most recently. So it's really interesting that it's still ongoing, even though like you said, Sam, it feels very much like a
Yeah.
prologue to the story because one, it's still ongoing, and also it's a story that's incomplete by virtue of it was early in its adaptation. So yeah,
Hmm.
so basically the story revolves in a world where people can use magic. They're called quartz, or they operate magic with quartz. It's kind of unclear in this episode since it probably established it well in episode 1, but since I'm so deep into it, I can't really get an understanding of it. But anyways, the main character is, okay, try to help me with this again, Sam. Is it Rugar?
Rygart.
Rygart. Yes, Rye. Okay, like the bread. Anyways,
Yes.
Rygart Arrow. He's a unsorcerer, which in this world means you're unable to use magic. It's pretty much a rare trait, more rare than like quirks in My Hero Academia. It's like one in every, I forgot what the number was, but like it's so rare that like his position is like, or his like existence kind of is a rarity anyways. But yeah, because of this though, he's able to pilot a advanced mobile suit. It's not a mobile suit, we're not in Gundam anymore, but a giant robot.
Yes.
A giant robot in this world are called golems.
Yep, golems.
And this is taking place during a time where two kingdoms are at war, one being Krishna, which is what our main characters are from, and the kingdom of Atlas, not Atlas, Athens. Yeah, so it's a fantasy mech anime, and that's it for the synopsis. Anything you want to add?
I would say the way that you would look at it, it's sort of like what Fire Force did with firebending, how they centered all of the magic system around manipulating fire and how everybody has different variations of that. I would say frame your mind in this film in terms of earthbending, because like you said, they essentially the people, they have the ability to manipulate quartz, and they base their whole society around that. Like for instance, you have to use megaphones or electronics, you have to be able to manipulate quartz on some degree. And this main character, he can't do any of that. For instance, he can't ride anything as simple as a bike because he has no ability to manipulate quartz. So it's just showing you the difference of being a non-bender in that sort of atmosphere. And just a bit of a quick lead up to episode 4, the main character Rygart, he went to school with Zess, Sigyn, and Hoder. So that's how they all know each other. And Hoder and Sigyn, they are now king and queen of the country that Rygart lives in, and Zess is from another country. So, for instance, when they went to school, it was sort of a joint school. That's something that we see nowadays. For instance, in Fort Benning, there's something called a School of Americas, where we have officers from other countries. They come and they take classes here, sort of like a joint international type of situation. And I would say there was something similar to our 4 main characters. And there is a conflict that goes on between Athens, the country where Zess is from, and the country of the other 3 characters. And Zess was trying to take over the capital with only a handful of units, and up to this time, and that's why he's in the state that he's in at the beginning of the episode. And that's sort of how we got to this point.
All right, cool. Yeah. So that's basically the breakdown for episode 4. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened since I didn't watch episodes 1 through 3?
Okay, yeah.
Just
so
to like, give a little background before we start talking about episode 4.
Yeah. Just leading up to episode 4, as I said, Zess, he is invading the capital with a handful of people. It's only him and 7 other golems. And the thing is, with the country that he's from, they have more power, more influence, and essentially trying to show up on Krishna, because the other country, so Krishna is in between Athens and another country called Orlando. And Orlando and Athens, they don't like each other. And somehow or another, forces from Orlando went through Krishna to attack Athens. And Athens are like, what the hell, bro? And so they're going down to Krishna basically to make them become part of the country. And the thing is, Krishna is well to do, but they're not as rich as the other countries. So a lot of their golems are low tech and not as high speed or as durable as the other countries are. So when Zess is coming in with his 7 people, and he's almost able to take over the capital. Like, that's just how good the Athens forces are, and it also is a testament to Zess's skills. And Holder calls upon Rygart because in school, Rygart was always the one who was able to squash any argument in between Hodor and Zess would have, and he was sort of like the glue that held everybody together. But while they were in school, he had to leave school because his money went out and he had to go back to the farm to help out with his family. And so we have Hodor bringing Rygart back into back bring Rygart to the capital and tells him the situation and says, "Hey, Zess is here. I'm gonna need your help with this, man. You've been able to help us with all that's going on." And in their excavation, they found an old golem that nobody else could pilot. Like, it was just very weird. And Holder just wanted to throw a shot in the dark and have Ryder get into the cockpit to see what happens. And lo and behold, he is the only one who can pilot the golem, and because it turns out to have uh, a different power source and a different system in which it operates. And they find out that it can only operate 30 minutes at a time, and it needs a cooldown period of 24 hours. And they also realize that it has a lighter, stronger frame, so it can jump farther, can jump higher, and it can also outperform some of the other mechs that they have at this time. And also, throughout all this, you realize that Krishna was given a terms of surrender. However, the terms of surrender would mean that both Holder and Sigyn would have to kill themselves in this surrender. And it seems as though Zess was not informed of the terms of surrender. So it seems like there are many hands at play in terms of the situation, and it's starting to culminate and come to a head in this in one of these battles that's leading up to whether or not Athens is going to be able to take over Krishna.
All right, cool. Yeah, that does seem to bleed into this episode for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, anything that has a succession of action is supposed to lead into one another, so it makes sense. But yeah, for this episode, there is much fighting going on. Again, I think I was a little bit too lost, but you definitely informed me enough that now I kind of get a good context from what was actually happening. But it definitely
Mm-hmm.
was enjoyable enough to warrant warrant me putting it on my top 10 list. And I'm very surprised that you're so no. Well, you have a fuller picture than I
Yeah.
about why it's so down on your like opinion, being the true mech fan. And it's really interesting that what I saw in this episode was very reminiscent of, I would say, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. There was this garb of like I was just paying attention to how the world building was in this episode
Yeah.
more than anything, since it was technically my first episode.
Mm-hmm.
So like the garbs that they wear is very Amestrus or like pre-war pre-World War One
Mm-hmm.
Germany, but it was still kind of fashionable against like this neo fashionism to their not steampunk world, but it's one of those things of Arthur C. Clarke's statement of like any
Mm-hmm.
advanced technology seems like magic, which I'm like, is that what's going on in the show? Is that it's like they're born magically, but they're a civilization that's been magically infused with technology, and like this is like far into the future where Krishna's, golems are like worn down, they're broken apart. You see like cracks in their frames, like all the plating is kind of worn out and has holes and
Mm-hmm.
blemishes and all these different things versus how the other nations have theirs like mobile suits. I keep saying mobile suits,
Yes.
robots,
They're
robots in
golems.
better condition. Yeah, even though like we see inside their cockpits, it's not too much more advanced. It's like one of those things of
Mm-hmm.
how fast does military technology advance when it's like no longer used. I mean, this is like production company, or it's the Studio
Mm-hmm.
Production I.G, but it's also in collaboration with Zex, or sorry, not Zex, but Zebec,
Oh,
Zabus, I
Zebek?
guess. Yeah,
Or
Zebek.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, Zebek, which I know because they did the Zoid series that I love.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all bleeds through into like the designs of the mechs that they're not the most eye-catching thing, but they have such a unique feel to it, which they do better than I think in Flowers of Exfonia.
Mm-hmm.
That they have like these weapons, like they have like claymores, they have daggers, they have a lot of like 15th century kind of weaponry, short sword, broadswords, like all this. They're basically knights. That's why I kind of made the allusion to knights and magic again, because they play up that idea that mechs are just oversized warriors or oversized soldiers, essentially. And I pretty much appreciate that, especially with my favorite scene that we'll get into. But anything else you want to say about the plot, Sam?
I would say just I guess some of the things that went on because you mentioned about how the golems from the country of Zex, how they look a bit worn down. Like I said, it's sort of like that's a visual representation in the disparity between the two countries, is showing you how poor Krishna is compared to the invading country, which is Athens. And it's odd too because Krishna, this is something that they say in the movies, is that Krishna is supposed to have the like its quarry, like the mound that the city is sitting on, is supposed to be the most quartz enriched place. So you would think that, like Wakanda, because they have vibranium, that would give them more prosperity because they're literally living on a mound of this mineral and this ore that's available to them. However, that it's not the case for Krishna. And one other thing too, because in this movie you see a scene with Sigyn, how she has this girl that's in her room. The girl that's in her room, she is one of the forces that was with Zess that was trying to take over the capital. They ended up capturing her, and what makes her very interesting is, despite her appearance, she looks like an adult woman. However, she is only 12 years old. And so that brings to question whether or not Athens was doing biological human experimentation as well, because no 12-year-old should look that full figured at all. And with her and her interactions with Sigyn, it's sort of a more watered down version of what we get with Banagher and Unicorn, how she gets to see the war from the other perspective, from the other side. And another thing that should be mentioned too was that when she was piloting Mech, and whenever she was fighting people, she took the Banagher route where she was fighting to immobilized. She wasn't fighting to kill. And the mech that sorry, not Ziegler, but Gerga, the guy with the glasses, the mech that he's riding in, that was the mech that she was captured in. So he is using mech. He's using the golem from the Athens side, which is why his mech was able to outperform all the others. And one other quick thing about the power as well in this show, because they have these weapons known as press guns. And essentially, as I said again, just think about this whole society as just earthbenders, but they just specialize in bending quartz. And so everything is made out of quartz. And depending on your physical prowess, it's how well you can manipulate it and how efficient you can do things. For instance, you would see people when they're shooting guns, you can see some people shoot further than others. The people who can shoot further, that just means that their manipulation abilities is just that much better. So whenever somebody says, I'm better with a longbow, or you see somebody that is being shot up and their armor doesn't go through, and then you see them go up against somebody else, and then all of a sudden their armor is being pierced, it's just because the person who shot them that can pierce that armor. That just shows how much more proficient at controlling quartz that second person is.
Right. Yeah, it gives weight to like the whole motif or trope in Mecha that these are soldiers being trained, and we
Mm-hmm.
focus usually on a young male character and like them being overly skilled in a certain art of like warfare, but with dude here,
This is a Rygart.
Yeah, Rygart, is that, again, he's not a sorcerer, he's an unsorcerer. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not the same thing, but it is that because he can pilot, I think it's called the Delphine,
Yes.
his golem. Yeah, okay. Because they dropped that a couple of times in this episode,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, who's Delphine? But yeah, I was able to pick up on it. But yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
again, that leads more into the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood comparison, is that they're a culture kind of defined by their use of one particular
Yeah.
science. Is that, Full Metal, I keep saying Full Metal Alchemist, but FMA is using
Mm-hmm.
alchemy, while this is using, earth bending,
Yeah.
as you said, Sam. And in the same way that alchemy focused on human uh, experimentations, I can see that being like something in the background of this
Mm-hmm.
anime. That you mentioned, like, why does this character look a certain way, and if
Mm-hmm.
they're not progressing in like obvious ways, does that mean they're doing a lot of shady stuff? Is there a lot of backdoor conspiracies? So maybe they're not allowing their own people to prosper, but they're selling the quartz to other nations. That's why the surrounding nations are actually more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
And now that they've kind of gotten to this point of higher advancement, can they just invade Krishna to kind of cut out the middleman? So there's a lot going on that
Oh
I
yeah.
see just from this one episode. Because my favorite moment, if we get into that right now,
Oh yeah. Let's go
favorite
ahead.
moment in line is that there is a scene where like these evading forces are coming up against the general of Krishna, which I believe is General True.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, General True. He's like a nice, like rounded, fat, chubby, blonde man, and he has a pretty decent, a robot. But going against the Athens forces is overwhelming because they're using this pilot, this female pilot who's basically a bloodthirsty maniac, essentially, kind of in
Mm-hmm.
the whole toga vibe, or the yandere vibe of My Hero Academia, and that how she essentially kills people is by pincering them to death. It reminded me of these guerrilla tactics from the Vietnam War called, I think they're called tiger traps, but I'm forgetting the Vietnam word for it. But it's
Mm-hmm.
basically like in her forearms on her robot, she has like serrated blades, and basically the mechanics of it is that it crushes the pilots. And that's how General True dies. And it's really graphic. Like, it shows his cockpit getting crushed, and it shows like his death very violently. Like, the cockpit closes in on him. There's a blood spurt. His suit gets completely ripped from torso down. She does
Mm-hmm.
this feral scream, and it kind of shows like this soldier's perspective of that, and like the whole demoralization of your leader getting killed right in front of you, because they are basically just soldiers on the battlefield. There's no overwhelming like full frontal that we just covered in Unicorn. Like there's just no one person mowing down everybody, but like
Yeah.
the general going head and head with the best fighter on their side is just like very jarring for
Hmm.
this episode, because there's a lot of war going on, but in that moment it kind of caught my attention of making me want to go back through it to see why should I care that this guy died. You kind of get this is kind of halfway through the episode towards the end,
Yeah.
but you do get, a nice, reason, lead up, foreshadowing to his death. So you kind of care when it does happen.
Hmm.
But again, just watching it for episode 4 by itself, I was like, you know what? I need to watch more of this because I want to know why this should be so impactful. But
Hmm.
yeah, Sam, can you tell me your favorite moment?
It was sort of like a group of moments for me. However, it was when General True's right hand, Narvi. It was when like their whole interaction was funny. I would say it was when she began to lead her group. So in the movie, she is pissed at True because he's being deployed elsewhere and she's not going with him. And he says, "Don't worry, I recommend you for a better job." And she's given the command of this elite 5-man team, and Ryguard is a part of that team. And it was just interesting seeing that training montage because she it just showed how good of a leader that she was. She focused on Rygart's deficiencies because he doesn't have the ability to manipulate quartz. He can't grab a gun from another mech and start shooting because you have to be able to manipulate quartz. So she finds ways to lead to his weaknesses that he can still be effective on the battlefield. And it was good to see Reigart gain a rapport with another military personnel that wasn't, say, Sigyn or Hodor, Hodor, I'm sorry, somebody from his childhood, but somebody that was current, that was in the military right now. And it was just nice seeing him. It was nice seeing that moment.
All right. Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, for sure. And again, like it's not one of those situations of like he's a pathetic character.
Hmm.
Like he has the military training. It's just like a situation of he's never been able to pilot one before, and I
Yeah.
don't know how many battle he's seen up till now. But it definitely gives the vibe in episode 4, being more than halfway through the series, is that he's still learning, but he's a proficient learner,
Hmm.
and that the military force of this country does value him in a way that encourages to become a better fighter. And of course, he has like personal reasons
Hmm.
to, fight. And you do get a sense of his uh, companionship with everyone that he's working with. Again, like not to talk about Benager anymore, but it
Hmm.
definitely stands in stark contrast in my mind to how Benager was portrayed in Unicorn. But yeah, Sam, was there any lines that stand out to you? Because I think that's one of the weakest points of this episode, is that
Yeah.
the dialogue kind of felt a little stiff or stilted in some kind of way that I couldn't really put my finger on. I mean, again, I'll go back and watch the series in full and
Yeah.
rewatch episode 4, but is there a certain line that caught your attention?
It was there was a line when excuse me. It was battling for my favorite moment of this film too. It was, you see Reigart, he's sort of in this, not necessarily a pool of sand, but in this area where there's just like all this sand. You just I'm just thinking it's just some of like the quartz mineral or stuff that's within the capital. And he's there just playing with his feet in the sand, and a guy comes up with glasses and with a hair. I'm sorry, with white hair. I believe his name. It wasn't General True. It was. Balder. It was General Balder. And the thing is, when you've seen General Balder was the general that was assigned to go and pick up Rygert in the beginning. So we see Rygert and Balder, they've had a bit of a rapport up to now, a bit of a back and forth. And this is sort of when this is right before when Rygart is sent out with his 5-man team to go on their first mission, and Boulder is sort of there to give his insight and give his input. And up until this point, he has been somewhat amicable towards Rygart, and giving some words of wisdom, things like that. He seemed to be the sort of wise old man who likes to keep his cool. And then in this moment, he's telling Rygart to be wary of the fifth member on this team, because they 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 get an additional fifth member who is controversial in nature, because he was first arrested because he killed a partner in a training exercise. And this is the first time that we really see Balder's character get emotional and say, when you get the chance, kill this man. And you learn that that's Balder's own son. And the fact that Rygart stands up and says, like hell I will, you don't have the right to tell me to kill your own son. You have to do that yourself, or you have to talk to him. Just that back and forth between them, that even though Rygart wasn't even though Rygart didn't know Balder personally, he still took their conversation very serious, and he was trying to get to the crux of the matter. It was just because from his perspective, it was just a disagreement between a father and son. He didn't know the entirety of the situation, but the fact that he would still take that conversation that he had with him as seriously as he did, it shows how close to Balder he became. And I just really appreciated that line of dialogue between those two.
Wow, that's shocking because that's my favorite line too.
Oh
And
yeah.
it's interesting, yeah, it's interesting that that actually changes from the sub to the dub because it wasn't phrased that way. Maybe how it was phrased in the sub was that he said that if it comes to it, you
Hmm.
might have to kill me. So
Yeah.
there was more of a possibility of he was giving the option, like he was giving a warning, not more of a command. But it sounds like in the dub that you watched that it was more of a command than a just a
Yeah.
warning.
It was to paraphrase it even closer. He said, "If he starts acting funny, don't hesitate to kill him."
Okay, then yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it was in the sub too. Oh yeah,
Okay.
don't hesitate to kill him. Yeah,
Hmm.
okay, cool. So that's good too. Yeah, that's my favorite moment too because it gets the idea across that for one of Rugar's Rygar's
There you go.
opinion of thank you, Rygar's opinion that even as a soldier he has this entrenched value of human life,
Hmm.
and that along the lines of what I said about Banagher's character, for Unicorn, that I want him to pull the trigger, and it feels like the same thing with um, Rygar here, Rygar here,
Yeah.
that he's not going to easily throw away someone's life, and that makes him endearing. But where it was with Banagher, it was kind of childish again.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because they're older. They feel to be older here. I don't know how old they're supposed to be. They feel like they're
Yeah.
early 20s, maybe because it's more of a, this is firmly a R-rated story, and having a little bit older, main cast makes it sense since they'll be able to engage with the world a little bit more readily. So I did like this line, especially for everything you said, but I like
Hmm.
the line of setting up this maybe antagonism or this rival
Hmm.
um, with Riger right now, because again, halfway through the series it doesn't seem to be one. His only challenge has been with himself and like becoming like battling against himself and the situation,
Hmm.
but now he has kind of like the what all mechas usually have is like a more interesting rival than the main character. So I like
Yeah.
the setup that this was the introduction to like the glasses pushing redheaded proficient killer in battle rival that he would have.
I'm actually kind of surprised hold on. Would you mind reminding me on what your favorite moment was? Because oh no, yeah, you said that your favorite moment was when the girl was using the pincer to kill General True. I was actually
Yeah.
kind of surprised that that was your favorite scene, as opposed to what happened later on with Gerga and the battle.
Yeah, so like he is my favorite character in this
Mm-hmm.
episode, but of that shocking moment, it made me feel like the battle was like one of those ones that like, oh, okay, that's cool, but with that moment where I think her name's Nike, I forget how they
Yeah.
pronounce it in the show, but it's Nike. She just, basically Farrell screams into the battle. She slides down. There's not even really a fight between General True and her. It's more like he's caught off surprise by the pure brutality that she like kind of exudes, and I'm sure she's going to show up later on eventually, or do more damage. But yeah, for right now, it was just a oh wow kind of moment,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what stood out in my mind versus oh that's cool kind of moment. So I like everything, like the battling that goes on, and like the surprise attacks, like the military formation and tactics they show, like how smart Geiger
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah.
in the series, how proficient he is as a warrior too, and everything that goes on with him and like developing a relationship with him and the main character. And yeah, I mean, I guess that moment would be close towards the end of the episode, but like if I'm going to say my number one favorite, it would be that moment, and it's kind of just brutal. I like the idea of having pincer arms to squeeze your opponent to death.
Oh man, just like this one character out there on the battlefield who is just who's just so skilled that she can take the time just to like bear hug her people to death. That's
Yeah.
is that a flex or I don't know. What would you consider that?
I think it is a flex, like one of those, like the snooty, like how it seems like his character is going to be, like the redheaded dude, is that
Yeah.
he's going to be so proficient and that he's going to play with his prey, and I feel like it's more sadistic and cold-hearted, while Nike is more warm-hearted about it. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up killing her later on in like
Mm,
an equally brutal manner. Like I wanted Marita to step on Riddy
yeah.
so I do kind of see that kind of happening between these two, because it's really interesting to see bloodlust between two different characters, one hot and one cold. So I'm looking forward to that into the next episodes or following episodes. But yeah, so that's favorite line and moment. So
Hmm.
Sam, moving on to our last segment is reception and impact. And it's really interesting along the lines of what the reception is on this series.
Hmm.
So right now it holds a 7.88 on my anime list, meaning that
Okay.
it is the number 678 best anime of all time. Again, that's how my anime list is what their tracking is, and I believe it has over 33 reviews on it, so it's not too bad along the lines of properly graded. I mean, this is in the year of our Lord 2010, where
Yeah.
Gundam Unicorn only got a 80 or a 8.1 or a 7.9. I believe that was the my anime list, and on the lower end of that scale was like a 64, 65, and that was the Gurren Lagann short stories. I forgot what that's called. It's like parallel something something.
Yeah, like parallels.
And like
Pillow
yeah,
works.
parallels. Yeah, Parallel Works. Yeah, that was it. Yeah. And it's interesting that this holds kind of top billing in that. So it's like the next highest rated for the 2010 anime. So Gundam Unicorns 1, and then all the Broken Blade episodes
Or
follow
like right
closely
after it.
behind. Right, yeah, which is above Stardiver, which is above the
Oh, it was
Gundam
above
Zero
Star
Zero movie,
Driver.
000 movie. I
Double O.
forgot its title. I think it's like Trailblazer or
Yeah,
something.
Awakening Trailblazer.
Yes, thank you, Gundam nerd. But anyways, yeah, so
Pushes up
I think,
glasses. You know it.
yeah, right, yeah. So I think it is a properly rated at a 7.8. I mean, I put it a little bit higher in my personal accounting, but I do
Hmm.
see that I do see the lingering feelings of that this is a prologue story. So I'm going to have to reevaluate it when I get to see all 6 episodes. But again, what really put me on to why I love this so much is that it feels like it takes all the strong points of every other mecha I've seen and just
Hmm.
distills it into this one series. I mean, it has that hardcore sense of violence, the brutal battles. The animation is so clean. I watched this on high dive and probably 1080p. I forgot what the
Ooh.
resolution was,
I
but it
didn't
was
know they get that high
super
on
high
High Dive.
quality. Right, yeah. So it was either 720 or 1080p, but it was like super crisp and clean that
Hmm.
it was still like oh my gosh, my eyes. But and like the characters are archetypal, but they get enough of a broad scope to make them unique and rememberable enough. The music is on point, like you said, being the work of Hirano,
Hmm.
and even the battles are like engrossing in the scale. I mean, you don't really have the weightiness. I mean, it's not going to take my number one spot with Code Geass and the eighth Mobile
Yeah,
Suit
eighth
team
mobile
because
suit.
of the weightiness. Yeah, the weightiness that I appreciate in those series more than this, and because they seem very flighty in this. I mean, there's the Delphine, which has this jumping quality, but there's no like boosters or.
No, no, no. I was just gonna say, like, with this series, it's a bit more realistic and gritty, much more similar to the latest Gundam that, well, not the latest, but one of the latest Gundam shows that came out, Iron Blooded Orphans. In that show, much like this one, they just used, I can't remember what the name of it is. I think it's auxiliary weapons. Essentially, just there was no beam weapons or no necessarily energy type weapons. It's all physical or combust weapons. And in this show, because of again, because the society is based around this style of earthbending, there's not going to be many forms of combustion or anything else like that. It's mainly just like how better I am at moving this type of earth than the other person is. So you won't see anything like thrusters. The only golems that you see that can move as fast or as gracefully as the Delphine would be the suit that Gerga was piloting, because in the earlier episodes, when Zess was with his team, they were the only suits on the field that looked like they could dance on the field because of how quick and light they were. Where all the other golems, they were just heavy and they seemed like they were more grounded to the air. And that was just because of the difference in quality and money that was able to put into the different suits.
Yeah, and it does show, even though interesting enough, there's not a lot of gunpla available for the series. I've only was able to count about 7 different unique models to build along
You found
across
7?
from.
I could only find
Yeah,
2. I was so sad. What were the suits that you were able to find?
I didn't write down their names, but I found them on Gunpla JP, so like the Japanese Gunpla site. So I don't know if you need to write in the Japanese names of the
Hmm.
golems to pull it up, but yeah, very hard to find. And of course, that kind of leads into why I think the reception of this is so low. And going back to my weeb opinion about
Hmm.
how this put the final death nail into the mecha genre. And of course, that's not to say that there aren't some outstanding mechas in the later 2010s. We'll probably talk about Gargantua when we get to that year, and
Yeah.
Knights of Magic, if we ever get that far. There's some other ones throughout the 2010s. So it's not dead. Again, it's just like the transition between, 2007, 2008, 2009, like with Eureka 7, Gurren Lagann, Code Geass, Full Metal Panic, Gundam Seed, Bokurano, like all these like came out in that period. But after 2010, or even in 2010, I mentioned this before in our first episode of this long history of the
Mm-hmm.
mecha genre, is that only 25 titles came out in this year, and most of them were just original net animations or original video animations, and only 4 of them actually premiered like on Japanese broadcasting services. So uh, what really struck me with Break Blade now, again, like it is so wonderfully animated. The characters are great. The action is well choreographed. Like this is just what you said, Sam, actually, for your weeb opinion. Like it has so much opportunity and it had so much behind it that I'm surprised that nothing really caught on because of this. I mean, not to say that there always needs to be like a 60-foot statue, livable statue need to be commemorate
Mm-hmm.
every great mecha, like the unicorn god, but like, and also like they aren't really that pretty. Essentially, like all the golems in the show, like they're all rustic. Like I said, they have
Mm-hmm.
blemishes. It actually reminded me a lot of the design of the Gundam Exia. If I can ask,
Yeah.
your your Gundam glass pushing opinion. Yeah, the Exia, it has like all these geometric panelings for its um, armor, and the same thing with the Delphine. Like they're all these odd shaped kind of suit, medieval kind of armor panelings, and it's just weird to look at. So I understand why it didn't get the traction like most mobile suits get, because they're not really eye catching, they're not really aesthetically pleasing to look at,
Mm-hmm.
but it just kind of feels uh, natural to the world that they're in. Again, it's a really dreary world. I mean, even like in Krishna, there's like these walled cities, kind of like Attack on Titan walled cities, and there's like limited technology, but again, it's all centered around this like one ability. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just weird that it has that vibe of what you said earlier about this is a underdog country going against a more advanced culture or civilization, like kind of like a little bit like Al Noah Zero, if anyone remembers Al Noah Zero,
Yeah.
that kind of blinked into existence and then no one remembers it. But yeah, so like again, like everything that it does well. Everything I like about Mecha, this does well for, an episode 1 that I've only seen. But yeah, that's my idea of what the impact is. Do you have any thoughts about its impact, Sam?
I would say a little bit about just to touch on what you're saying to compare the looks of the mechas too. I would say that I can understand why you would think Exia would look a little bit like the mechs here, because I think from the Gundam shows that you've mentioned, that was the most knightly looking one. But I would say that the outlook or the mech design of Braid Blake's golems are more like what you said earlier, a little bit of a mishmash of some of the Zoids aesthetic combined with some of the earlier mobile suits that we see in Iron Blooded Orphans, because the knight motif is something that they do a lot in Iron Blooded Orphans, especially the spare parts design, the rustic design as well, because they are also the beginning episodes of Iron Blooded Orphans does take place in a seemingly rustic wasteland too. And to give my opinion on the show, to where not to deter you from experiencing it yourself, I'm just going to try and give my thoughts on what I thought up to episode 4, because as you said, the characters were great. The dynamic with Rygart, Holder, Sigyn, and Zess, that's something that you really see in episodes 1 through 3. Is it builds this relationship between those 4 characters, why they mean so much to each other. And I think that Zess would probably fight Geiger for your #1 spot in terms of characters that you would like in this series. And just his rapport with Rygart, it's it seems natural, even though on paper it shouldn't be. And when character interactions come naturally, just because of how their characters are done, that's a good sign of writing, in my opinion. And again, as you mentioned earlier, the different conspiracies that are enveloped in the world. So you see this great foundation and character development between these core characters, and they are thrust into this world of intrigue and conspiracy, and they have to deal with the violence that it calls for. And essentially, the conspiracies are given a seat or on the back burner because they have to deal with the immediate threat and the violence that goes on. With what you said earlier about this weaker country trying to defend itself against this bigger country for calling them out on something that they didn't necessarily know happen or were in charge of allowing to happen. And you get this theme of it's a theme that they mention multiple times throughout the show of fighting destiny. And when I'm watching up to this point, it definitely feels like it was going to be a tragic story in a sort of Band of Brothers way, where they are fighting a dying, or they're fighting a losing battle, but because they're soldiers and that's their job to defend the capital as best as they can with what they have at their capabilities, they still have to do that regardless, even though they know that the other people has more numbers, the other people are well trained, the other people are more skilled, and the other people have better funding, so they have better mechs and they have this, that, and the third. I mean, in the first few episodes, you see the defenses for Krishna, they're practically halved or decimated from this 7-man team. So you have this creeping doom sensibility of doom happening for this country. And yet when you have Rygart interact with Holder, Sigyn, and even with Zess a little bit, you have this ray of hope that because of their character interaction and how they affect one another, that they can essentially come through this on the other side. And that is sort of what kept me going, along with Rygart's more malleable outlook on war as a whole, as opposed to what Benager's was. Again, as you said, because he's older and he is more willing to fight and to take lives in the process, just because of his upbringing as a soldier and how he is now able to actually put those skills to the task. And when the series ends, I would like to see how it would end, and I would definitely love to see this series be given a second chance. I would say that this show definitely does deserve a reboot. That way they can better tell the story and frame it in a way that it doesn't feel incomplete. And I also need this show to get more popular so that I can buy a version of the Black Delphine, because from what I've seen, it's sold out and it doesn't seem like they're going to be making it anytime soon unless there's a resurgence of popularity. So I needed to get it popular quick and fast.
Yeah, and it's interesting along the lines of what you just said about popularity is that it did warrant a full full episode or full 12 episode run in 2014.
Hmm.
So, which does seem to be a trend that has somewhat disappeared in most recent years. So it happened with Unicorn, with it had its 24 episode run, 26 episode run.
Yeah, with
Uh,
Re
um,
96.
yeah, Re 0096,
Hmm.
and then this had the same treatments to have a 12 episode release and aired on Tokyo MX, I believe, back in the summer of 2014. So it's not that too far out of, far left field that it might get a resurgence now when the manga finishes. I haven't heard anything from the author about it finishing anytime soon, but
Hmm.
given that it was released back in 2006 and the anime got its adaptation in 2010, so it looks like there would be a possible 4 season run of it, if I'm doing math correctly. Again, I'm not a math teacher, but yeah, it does seem to be in the camp of giving it to maybe another animation company that
Hmm.
kind of specializes more in mechs. I forget who does Iron Blooded Orphans, but yeah, it's definitely a property that would demand a reboot or reimagination. So
Hmm.
Sam, that brings a close to our covering of Break Blade 4 or Broken Blade. It
Yes.
goes by both titles, but Broken Blade is also a esports team. So yeah,
Is it?
Yeah, look up Break
Oh, maybe
Blade.
they're fans.
Maybe who would be a fan? I don't know. But anyway, any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Oh man, this was fun, and I would say my words to you, Jay, would just be to enjoy the ride while you take it, because no, in a good way, because the show, it did well in building up to this episode 4, and there are some good payoffs in the other 2 episodes afterwards, and it was a good ride. It was a good experience.
Yeah, for sure. Because we did 10 episodes of just mech focus. So think we will maybe go back to our regular schedule of reviewing an anime per episode. So we get a
Yes.
little bit more. I think this was just a nice break from the established norm, but we'll see because the summer season is almost ending. Have you been keeping up with your summer anime so far, Sam?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go back. I'm behind on Decadence so bad. I'm behind of God of High School. Oh my goodness, God of High School. That's gonna be fun catching up on. And oh, I finally saw the episode with Fire Force, where it had the black anime character. He had fire tattoos on it. Oh my goodness, he put in the work so hard. What about you? Are you caught up on all your summer anime?
I have been caught up on Fire Force, and I believe that's it. So, yeah, it's been a very interesting summer. So, like, we were so hyped for it. Well,
Yes.
hype maybe, but there was some, notable ones that we want to keep track of. But
Hmm.
given our professions, I'm assuming that we just get too busy with life. But anyways, the fall season starts on the first week of October. Again,
Hmm.
my number one anime would be Haikyuu, season 4, core 2. So we'll come back and talk about our fall anime uh, watch list. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, Sam. Again, I found out that I was a closeted Mecha fan. I had
You were
a
just lying to yourself.
apparently I grew up on Mecha and totally blanked it out of my memory. Maybe because it was trauma, maybe it was maybe too much happiness I experienced. But Sam, let's close out this episode. What do you have to say for us?
I forgot to think of a good one for this one. Oh, he doesn't even sign off either. I would have to say, don't tell me that.